employees is Zach Warfel. And Zach was one of my first employees. His mother is the current high school FCCLA advisor. And at the time when I first started working with young people, she was the middle school advisor. And then Tammy Champa, who is Dr. Tammy Champa, who's the superintendent of Pine Island Schools, used to come in the coffee shop once a month and have a meeting. And so it was really a good place. I got to know a lot of people in Pine Island in a lot of different ways. The first interaction I had with FCCLA, which is the youth group that I've been working with the most in Pine Island, was when they came to Carol during the holidays at the coffee shop. Angela got in touch with me and said, can we come down and sing carols? And I said, great. So they came down. And of course, a lot of my being in Pine Island, which is a more rural community, a lot of my customers were older adults, and they loved the kids coming in and singing. And that was a big way. They did that at least once or twice when I had the coffee shop open. And then because of my dementia friend work and becoming a champion in 2015, 2016, I was able to find out about the Remember Project. And with SEMA's help, I was able to bring the Remember Project to Pine Island. Angela was on my Remember Project team, and she was also part of an arts and aging consortium that came out of the Remember Project. And all of that kind of came into a dementia awareness workshop. Angela and I were trying to decide how do we help bring this information to students. So the other part of this, as far as getting people to know what's happening, wear your dementia friend button, which I have on today, which you probably can't see, and tell people what's happening. And you'll find you all know this, they'll share their stories, and then you can find out who can help you, who can help bring dementia awareness to the young people in your community. So it's all about connections. You've got school connections, you've got youth, church group connections, Scouts, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, 4-H leaders. And what do those organizations all have in common? They're all about family, career, and community service. FCCLA, which for those of you that don't know, was formerly FHA, Future Homemakers of America, back when I was in school, stands for Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America. HOSA, which is Health Occupation Students of America, Future Health Professionals. So we have organizations that are actually geared specifically for what we need, the organizations, the people that we need to know about dementia awareness. So we should take advantage of that when you can. This was one of our first projects that we did. It was a Hat Not Hate anti-bullying lunch and learn at the senior center with our fearless FCCLA leader, Angela. This was when she was in middle school, the middle school advisor. She brought 7th and 8th graders to congregate dining at the senior center in Pine Island. And they brought their own lunches, and these community members donated blue yarn, and the students and the seniors learned to knit. Some of them crocheted. We had students teaching older adults to crochet, older adults helping them with projects. And Angela, in this way, started my post-coffee house work with young people in Pine Island. Talk about it over coffee, bingo, at the grocery store. People come up and ask, what are you doing? 20 minutes later, maybe you let them loose. That's the whole advantage of, in some ways, a smaller community like Pine Island. Of course, this was my coffee shop. This was a volunteer group that we got together. People were wondering about, how do we volunteer? I didn't know this was happening. How do we do that? Well, we got people together and we started talking about the opportunities that were available. And if you're not comfortable doing this, I'm sure in all of your networks, somebody has a person with the passion for dementia and a passion for talking, and that's what you need to find. So why engage young people? Well, we all know that currently the young people will likely know 4 generations of people living with dementia. If they're fortunate enough to have great-grandparents, grandparents, parents, and possibly a spouse someday. And they already may be care partners. They may be helping care for their grandparents, or they may be doing more chores at home because mom and dad are helping with parents. They already are somewhat aware of dementia and Alzheimer's and all of the other diseases. And for me, one of the most important things is you can reach their parents through these young people. I don't know about you guys, when you do Dementia Friends or any kind of awareness, a lot of times the people that come in Pine Island are all 50 plus or 60 plus to the Dementia Friends sessions. This allows you to reach those 30 to 50-year-olds. Their kids will go home and talk about it. In one of the examples I'll show you is Read Across America, and there were one young man in a class that said, "I'm going to take this Dementia Friends button home and talk to my mom about it and tell my mom what I learned today." So that's how we get into that younger crowd that's really busy, and I understand that. But if we go through the children, maybe that'll increase our awareness there. I asked Pine Island care partners what they wanted young people to know. And these are care partners that regularly attend our memory cafe. And they said they wanted young people to know how to respond to confusion in a positive way, that it's scary, it's the disease, that's the cause of what's happening, that dementia is different in every person, and it's not always about memory loss. Actions you can take go from small things to big things. Okay, I talked about Read Across America. I offered to read a book I was asked to read a book by Mrs. O'Reilly to the 2 of the 8th grade classes. And I read Grandpa and Lucy by Edie Weinstein, which she wrote as her final Girl Scout project. And I believe all the proceeds for that go to the Alzheimer's Association. I also read part of Why Can't Grandma Remember My Name by Kent Carrison. And that's actually a great book because it's a question and answer scenario, but it also has artwork from people living with dementia and young children. And so it's a great incorporation of art into the books. Intergenerational projects, we had the Hat Not Hate Lunch and Learn project. And then that led to a holiday lunch workshop where the students a couple of months later invited the senior center people and all our memory cafe people to a lunch at the council chambers, actually. And they made lunch for us, and we had artwork that they were able to work on. We had sugar cookies people could decorate, and it was really truly intergenerational. There were I don't know how many FCCLA students running around, and probably about 15 older adults. And then that actually led to the dementia awareness workshop that we did. You can do art series. This came out of the Arts and Aging consortium that I was part of. Any type of art project. I worked with teachers at the Pine Island School. In one case, we had Nicole Menches did a clay class. We did a sound bowls meditation that was through the Minnesota YMCA. And then we had a music therapist talk about how your brain works with music and how music can help people remember. You can do Dementia Friends sessions with teachers. They need to understand that their students may be dealing with this, and they need more understanding as well. Our workshop in the fall, COVID willing, will be intergenerational. The last workshop we did have one person from the Memory Cafe that came in and was involved in the latter part of the workshop. But hopefully we'll have be able to be more people in for the last workshop this fall. And then we are going to do a workshop on the workshop, which is where the toolkit comes in, and we'll have more information on that later on. This is me reading to Mrs. O'Reilly's 8th grade English language arts class. I read, like I said, the 2 books. And before I left, she asked the students if they would be willing to share if they knew someone who had dementia or Alzheimer's. And 1/3 of the students raised their hand. And those were just the students that were willing to raise their hand. She also read the book Before the Ever After as part of National Poetry Month. That book is by Jacqueline Woodson, and it's written in verse from the son's point of view as he tries to cope with his famous father's deterioration due to CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which I always stumble on, and his accompanying memory loss. This is a picture of our after party from the Hat Not Hate Knit and Learn project. The students invited us to come to the school where they did a big promotion of the project. We're all wearing our hats. We all signed an anti-bullying pledge, and they had treats for us there. And there are some of the ladies. I'm sitting kind of in the center of that picture with a group of ladies from the senior center, and some of which were in our memory cafe also. This is our second of 2 clay classes during the Yes You Can art series that we did. The volunteer on the left brought the 3 other gentlemen from Rochester for 5 weeks of our series of artwork. The care partners for these 3 gentlemen all were impressed with how much they enjoyed being together and having fun. The volunteer from Elder Network actually also created a group. They calls them the Dynamic Dudes. And when they were gonna come to one of these, he'd send out an email saying, "Don't forget, I'm picking you up at this time." And it was to the Dynamic Dudes. So it was a lot of fun. And actually, after the Sound Bowls meditation, he shared with me that on the way home, there were only 2 gentlemen that were there to watch that, or to be a part of that particular week. And he said they were both saying on the way home, "I'm really tired, can you get us home?" And he's like, "Well, I'm not breaking any speed limits, but yeah." And then he found out later that they both took naps when they got home. So the relaxation really did work for them. When I talk about the workshop, this is just our welcome page. I just wanted to give you an idea of what we had out there for. When the students came into the forum room, which is like a big room where they have the school board meetings and everything, we had this up on the screen, and this was our welcome. Originally, that workshop was designed for FCCLA, or that's where we were headed. And then we decided to expand it to include student leaders for clubs, any club or organization in the area. So we had students from SAD, Students Against Destructive Decisions, Student Council, Strategy Club, Art Scream, FCCLA, FFA. So that's getting it out there to any of those other organizations and making it an optional thing for them to do. Again, with the workshop, this was one of the projects that we did. It's called Gratitude Jars. The students all learned how a care partner could use the jars, and then they decorated their own jar and put little colorful slips of paper in there. Some of them were blank, they could fill out later, and some were written, they had written a note on there what they were thankful for that they could look at later on. And this project actually also went as a presentation. It was submitted and approved as a presentation at the national conference in San Diego. There were 2 sessions, 2 half-hour sessions where students there, or people there, made gratitude jars. And this was an idea of our layout for 4 of the roundtable activities that we did during the workshop. On the left side, you'll see under the orange banners, that was where we did fidget mats with loop yarn. And we had things that people could put over the loop and then work it into the yarn, or into the mat, I should say. In the far corner under the computer screens, we did healthy food for healthy brains collages with a PowerPoint that was done by the director of food services at the school. The empty table on the far right is where students could eat their box lunches. And then close in on the right with that yellow tablecloth is where they were doing gratitude jars. And the other interesting thing about eating lunches, by the way, I didn't realize this, but after the first workshop, Angela came up to me and she said, I've never done something with FCCLA students where that was this long over lunch hour, where they haven't come up to me and said, when are we going to eat? When are we going to eat? When are we going to eat? And she didn't have one student that asked that. She didn't have one. And some of the students normally would eat like at 10:45 and they didn't eat till 1:30. They were so involved in going around to the round tables and doing what they were doing. The other thing was at that session, we didn't see one student bring a phone out. at all. At either of the workshops, actually, nobody brought out a phone. So the free toolkit workshop on the workshop. This is with support from SEMA, the Pine Island Schools, and the Pine Island Lions. And it's basically a workshop about the workshop. We'll have, hopefully, COVID willing, 2 in person and 1 via Zoom. And those will be free for anyone who wants to attend. We'll do a flip book style toolkit that'll showcase how we put together our program or our workshop. And there'll be room on there for you to write brainstorming ideas and networking things that you get from other people at the workshop or when you go back to your community. So the toolkit contents are basically based on who, what, when, where, why, and how. Purpose and goals of your workshop, who your audience is and who you're going to ask to participate, location, date, and logistics, a budget, a timeline, and volunteers, marketing ideas, today's the day, set up and tear down, and then follow up and resources. And the interesting thing, I will say, again, I whenever I talk about the workshop, I praise the 2 advisors, Carrie and Angie, because when we did our first workshop, we went the night before and went down to the rooms we were going to be in, and they were all occupied. They were both occupied. So we couldn't set anything up the night before. And I said, well, what time do you want us here? And Angela's like, oh, come in about 7. And I'm like, okay. And I went home and I'm like, this is not going to happen. There's no way because we had registration starting at 9 o'clock. But there's no way we're going to get set up in 2 hours because we had laptops to set up, multiple laptops, my dementia friends session, slide presentation, which thankfully Carrie did. And all the tables and everything and all the little things you had to put on the jars, the whole 9 yards. Like, no way, this is, but whatever it's going to be, that's fine. The next morning I walked in and Angela's like, take this and put it over there. Take this and put it over here. I'm like, I will do whatever. And man, by 9 o'clock, we were all set up, including a registration table, bags that kids got to, I mean, it was amazing. And I couldn't have done it. It would have never turned out the way it did without those 2 teachers helping me. So I can't praise them enough. Why engagement, what engagement creates. So this was a comment from one of the SAD students that came to the last workshop that we did. She's a senior and she was from Wabasha, Kellogg. So they actually came about an 1.5-hour drive for a 4-hour workshop, an 1.5 hour one way. She said, look beyond the stereotypes of dementia. There's so much more below the surface. It is vital we all work together so we can provide the right care. And if we start small, we could turn it into something big. And that's what I'm hoping we can do. I'm hoping that it becomes something big and that people continue with this engagement. The Pine Island High School students, this is the high school group from the first Dementia Awareness Workshop. We painted that rock. It's a rock that people can, it's $25 to paint it for a week. There's Angela's on the far right, and that's her group of high school students from Pine Island. Everybody got a t-shirt at both workshops that says, nothing about you without you. Students for Dementia Awareness. And here are 2 students that were both seniors. They both graduated. They both became Dementia Friend champions after the workshop. And they presented 2 15-minute, what's called a red talk for FCCLA about gratitude. And they had a lot of very positive feedback from other people. And this was at the national convention. And that is where I participated in 7 roundtable discussions, 10 minutes each, with state and national advisors and chapter leaders. And my message was specifically about the umbrella message and the button we had made, which you can't see, and I'm sorry I didn't do a photo of it, increasing dementia awareness 1 kid at a time. And that's the idea that you have dementia, and underneath dementia, you have Alzheimer's, you have Lewy body, you have frontotemporal, as opposed to dementia and Alzheimer's being the same thing, which is what I encounter a lot anyway. And one of the messages that students really understand after the workshops. Moving forward, create the connections where you get your helpers and your money. Brainstorm, engage the youth to help you get projects. Plan at least one project to get the ball rolling. Get excited and talk to everybody. And tell your story and be passionate. So here, again, I'm going to thank SEMA and the Pine Island Schools and the Pine Island Lions. I hope you all are intrigued and excited about engaging young people in your communities. I'm grateful for the wonderful network of supporters who encouraged me and helped me. None of the work I am now doing would be possible without them. So thank you all for your attention. And there's my phone number. I have 2 email addresses. One's on my phone, one's on my laptop. The Gmail is probably faster to get to me. And back to you, Jen.
Thank you so much, Marie. Yes, Caroline's clapping, yes. So I would like to open it up for questions, because you gave us a ton of information, and it also shows you've been just really, really busy.
I have been a little busy, yeah.
Yeah, doing a lot of stuff. So I'm opening it up for questions. Does anybody have specific questions to ask Marie? Carolyn.
Yeah, so this is so incredibly and well done. My curiosity is, Jen, is there an opportunity for our community of learning to ever have an education where Marie would present this, whether it's at Train the Trainer or however is appropriate, so that it actually could potentially be replicated? I don't know what that would look like, if there'd be a cost for it or whatever, but I'm just asking that this be considered, because I think there are great opportunities through schools like yours. But I also wonder how much success we might have with confirmation students, where they have to get in service hours, with the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, because they do have their silver, gold awards, their Eagle Scout awards. So I can leave it at that, but I think this is actually exceptional. Thank you.
Excellent. I think that question goes more to Marie about how much she's willing to share and do, because we're absolutely, I mean, the point of this monthly meeting is that to keep the conversation going and teach one another whatever we can. So I'm very willing to help, you know, to either let Marie do something like that, or certainly to be a conduit so that we can all attend something she's doing virtually.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where the toolkit comes in. That toolkit is, while it was designed based on the FCCLA workshop we did, that actually gives you the information, the actual information, and lets you go through and write notes and make notes on things, local organizations you can reach out to, all that kind of thing. So I think, you know, the first step is when we do the workshop this fall, we'll actually, like I said, do one virtually and hopefully at least one, maybe two in person. Maybe we'll switch it around and do two virtually if we have that much interest. And the people, my vision of that is people would sign up ahead of time, and then I'd mail them the toolkit so that they'd actually have it in their hands when we meet, and then they can just fill in the toolkit as we go along. But Carolyn, if you have other ideas on maybe that's one of the things. You watch the toolkit, go to the toolkit thing, and then we can work from there if you want more information than that. But I think the idea behind the toolkit is that'll help everybody to do a workshop. And I can also always expand on the idea of, how do you get people going? But really it's about talking to people and finding out, I've never talked to somebody and have them say, oh, well, I don't know anybody who has dementia. And you get little tidbits of information that way from talking to people.
So our biggest connections where I work, we have many, many church partners. So that's where my mind went first. And so whether you want to go through Jen to send a message out to the whole, or whether you want me to email you individually, please let me know.
Okay.
So this is Holly, and I've got a question. I'm down near Marie in Rochester, and we've had clients and the volunteer from Elder Network be very engaged with this. And so I know from the adult perspective how much they enjoyed working with the youth at some of these projects. But my question is for either Marie or the teachers that are on the call today. I'm just kind of curious to hear from you the feedback from the youth who participated. Did they talk about this after the event, and how has it maybe changed their viewpoint on seeing diagnoses of things, that might be happening later in life? Because I think we all want to provide workshops and presentations and things that are meaningful and that people can take things away from it after the fact. So I guess I'm just curious if there's any feedback from the students.
Yeah, I think Carolyn can talk about all the feedback she got the day after the first one, and then maybe some of the projects that the students did.
Yeah, hi, I'm Carolyn O'Reilly. So I'm a 7th and 8th grade teacher. I was involved with the Dementia Friends training as a middle school FCCLA advisor. And then I did start to bring it into my English classroom as well with the read aloud. And I'm planning to actually start with that read aloud this year as my first book that I bring into the classroom. As it has a football theme to it, so it at first sort of engages the the kids who are into sports, and then they learn that there's this like deeper struggle, and it's told through the viewpoint of what the young boy is going through as he watches his own father struggle with the CTE. So it became a very powerful book, and I think it'll just help to. What I saw with the students is that getting the information and going through these trainings just gives them something to start talking about. So if they're experiencing these things, that they know they can either come talk to me, or I can connect them with somebody else who they would be able to then learn more or talk about their experience. Oh, sorry, my lights went off in my room. So I think that's all our kids really want to know, is that everything is going to be okay with the people that they love. So if they see a grandparent that's struggling, or their own parents who are taking care of their grandparents, and they're watching them struggle, they want to know how they can still connect with grandma and grandpa, or how what their parents might be going through if they're not able to connect with their grandparents. But I was really surprised as a teacher to know that so many of my students in my room were experiencing this, that this was something their families were experiencing.
And I think after the first workshop, both Carolyn and Angie came up to me and said, I think Carolyn, you said you had some 7th and 8th graders that came up to you and said they wanted to do something about dementia. And that actually they did a, what do you call it? The trifold. You can explain it better than me. Yeah. So after the first workshop, I didn't have anybody committed to doing the STAR event, the competition speeches with FCCLA. And I had a group come up and say that they wanted to continue to learn more and to do that for their presentation. I think the group that came up didn't actually stick with it. I had a different group of 3 that came in and wanted to do it. So it sort of began to grow interest. So it's just like I planted the seeds with the workshop, and them experiencing and getting to talk about it, and then learn they can make this craft, or they can do the storytelling with people that they would love,
or they saw that maybe in a future career, like working at the nursing home, they would be able to include these skill sets in their future career that they might be considering. Because we start to talk about all those things in the 7th and 8th grade and into high school. So just building on either what they're going through in their family or what they're thinking about doing as a career too. I don't think I finished talking about the STAR event they did. I had a group of 3 7th grade girls do a virtual STAR event, and they were able to compete at state, and they earned a gold rating for state. So that was how it fit into the FCCLA club as well. So.
That was very helpful. Thank you both. More questions? Well, I would just like to start a little conversation if nobody has a direct question. One of the things that that resonated with me so much, Marie, was that you were also incorporating, like, it wasn't just about dementia, like you were doing that, the anti-bullying stuff, right? So it isn't about just this one issue. It was about really kind of making these communities know and care about one another and interact on different causes and different levels and different projects. That was exciting to me. And I think part of that is, I know I grew up in a really small town where there wasn't a nursing home and there wasn't even a doctor in our town. So everybody kind of helped everybody live in their houses as long as possible, right? I mean, I remember always walking down Main Street and having people say, "Hey, Tommy Mitchell's granddaughter." That's what they all called me, because everybody knew my grandpa because I looked like him. And then they'd say, "Here's my key, go into the post office and open box number whatever and bring me my mail so I don't have to get out of my car," right? But I grew up like that, and I didn't think anything of it. Growing up in a multi-generational community was just something I did. And then when I left and got to the city, I kept thinking, where are all the older adults? Like, how come I don't see them at the grocery store like I used to? And how come I don't? And so I realized, to your point of maybe that being a passion later on, that was something that is just part of who I was, and I missed that. And that's why I kind of went into, geriatric social work. So I love that idea of melding different projects and just making them become kind of companion groups. Does anybody have anything that resonates with that?
I guess when I have something to share, the caring connections piece is something that I've thought about often. Like, how do we as communities take care of each other and make sure that we are, I guess, as a teacher, but also as a parent, making sure to pass that on to my kids, is something that my husband and I have always felt really strongly about. And I think you'll find that how do you become this caring connection really resonate with the church groups or Boy Scouts. There's just so many different organizations that speak to that same type of thing, and that parents and families are trying to pass on to their own kids. So Dementia Friends and all the work that I started to do last year with Marie and Angie really fulfilled that piece. And then as an English teacher, I really wasn't sure, like, how do I build this into my curriculum? Like, there's so many things that I know are expected of me, but I never wanted to lose that connection piece in my classroom, because our kids had just gone through the COVID pandemic and they were socially distanced and isolated. And I saw that so many of these kids just really needed to feel like valued and seen. And Dementia Friends really was a way for them to do that and to feel that they could care for someone, but also be cared for themselves.
That's why I love my teachers, and they're rock stars.
Well, and kudos to you for knowing who to partner with. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, no, I was just going to say I too was struck by how the focus on the Dementia Friends and the work you did with the youth, and especially with the anti-bullying piece, it's not just a single issue.
Right.
And I'm very impressed by the Dementia Friends, meaning that volunteers and how can I be a better friend and neighbor? Really, it's an opportunity for us to have multiple messages. And so I applaud your work, and we're trying to do that with our Living at Home network and our volunteers that help people live safely in their own homes and to educate and inform people in a way that's fun so they don't realize they're being educated or informed.
Yeah.
But so kudos, I was very impressed, and we've been making lots of notes.
Thanks.
I have a question or maybe a comment. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Constantini. I'm at Cronlet Village in St. Paul. We're very excited to host one of the community learnings. But we've been doing Dementia Friends for quite a while, and at Cronlet Village is senior housing. So we have a location in St. Paul where we're near a lot of high schools and universities. So we're really blessed with quite a few service learning students of all ages through the university level. And so what I now coming off of like the chaos of COVID the last couple of years is people are thirsty to come in and volunteer. People are thirsty for the information. And what I'm trying to do in the next year or so with our next round of service learning students and interns that I supervise is bridge that gap between the information that they're learning in the Dementia Friends sessions with the workshops. I'm even now sending them to TikTok to look at TIPA snow videos, like anything I can do where they're actually like learning about how to have those positive interactions, like bridging the gap between those that simply come in to volunteer, either one-to-one visits or volunteering in the culinary area where they're inevitably always interacting with people with dementia. And so I don't know if you have any tips or strategies. I'm really excited to dive into your toolkit that you shared, because like, I'm sorry I didn't catch your name, the gentleman that was just speaking, was it Mark?
Yeah.
Was just saying like there's that natural and organic connection between anti-bullying and dementia education. We've always talked about becoming a dementia friend means being a dear neighbor or a dear friend, because I certainly see a lot of older adults that are not nice to their peers that have dementia, and same with kids. So this is an incredible opportunity, but as someone that wears a lot of hats, it's also overwhelming to like disseminate that information where we're really making the connections between those that are receiving the education, if they're attending a workshop, and those that are like boots on the ground, walking in the door to volunteer or interacting with their grandparent or fill in the blank.
And I'm not sure how to answer your question. I think, if I understand what you're saying is you've got volunteers that come in, and then you've got people that get education, but they're not the same group.
They usually are. And I think what happens a lot is people just during the orientation get the information, and then that's it. They don't get the information again. So then they're just floating throughout the year, and they might have some uncomfortable or some interesting exchanges with people with dementia. So I'm almost wondering if we propose like a second round of, kind of a recap at the end of the year. What did you learn?
Right.
Yeah.
So kind of the follow-up part of things with, and we tried to do that with students, although I don't think we got a lot of survey responses, and that might just be because it was a survey and they're students and they're like, yeah, right. But but I think what we did with like, for instance, our second workshop that we did, students from the first workshop were asked if they wanted to volunteer, and they actually ran the roundtables that we did at the second workshop. So they actually helped students and helped explain the every activity they were doing to the other students. And now in the third workshop that we're going to do, I'm hoping we can still get some of those students to come through and go forward and help that. And then as we involve people from our memory cafe or from through Elder Network that come to this third workshop, then they'll actually be able to use some of those tools that they learned. And we asked them to come to the Dementia Friends session again as well. So if they go through it the second time and maybe even be part of that particular even though maybe they're not dementia champions, but they could still be part of the dementia friends part. And then actually helping with that second part of the workshop was helpful, I think. And I do think I had students that came up to me after the first workshop during the first break after I got done with the dementia friends session. And one came up to me and she said, my great aunt has dementia and she's an artist or was an artist. And I never thought of doing artwork with her. I never thought of trying to do art with her. And then another young man came up to me and I showed part of the video that we presented at the summit. And he said, I think I recognized one of the ladies in that video, and I happen to know who he was. And I know he is the neighbor of one of the women in the video, who both sides of her family had Alzheimer's. And so she's very concerned about her memory, and she's in her 70s. And she tells everybody, that she's nervous about this. And I said, yeah, I think you probably did recognize her. And he said, yeah, it's really interesting because it's a small world. And I said, yeah, and that was the interchange. But he really, then he kind of, Jean said after that, he came up to her and he said, I became a dementia friend at the workshop, and then we had another young man who went, actually two people, I think, that went into the classroom next to Angie's after that first workshop. And we're talking to Ms. Len there and said, telling her about what they learned in this dementia workshop and how important it was to be a dementia friend, and actually go up to a senior who's in her 90s that one of them helped on a semi-regular basis. And he said, I'm a dementia friend now. So if you need anything, I can help you. So it's kind of a soft way to get in there. But I think if you do some follow-up with them afterwards, that's probably the best way to do it.
I love that. Marie, something you said really stuck with me that I think is a better practice for us is not just doing the dementia friends for the students when they first start to give them some information, but then a lot of them are through the second semester. And so re-engage them again and do another dementia friend session and maybe invite them to do read aloud some of the components of it, or just something where they're just even more involved. There's some great opportunities there. So thank you.
I love this. And I love that we've got people from Indiana and Pennsylvania joining us and being inspired by what you're doing in Pine Island. Way to go. It makes me very happy. One thing that I was recognizing as everybody was talking about, the comfortability of things. And I think part of it, especially in this day and age, is with dementia friends, for kids, for young adults, I should say, to learn that you don't always have to be right. And I think that's one of the big keys to working with people with dementia is kind of, accepting them where they're at and what what their truth is. And I know I learned that by watching my parents interact around my grandmother's dementia, because my dad was always trying to correct his mother when she would say they do the wrong thing. And my mom would go with it every time. And it was always so much easier, right? And so I love this idea of just teaching those nuances through that interaction. I think I saw Beth jump on. Beth, I think you're out in Massachusetts. Do you have a comment?
Thank you, Jen. I unfortunately got waylaid with another meeting, so I just figured I'd catch the tail end. So I think I'll just listen because I missed every.
Oh. We're glad to have you here.
We do in Dementia Friends Massachusetts. We do have high school students who are champions and work with them, sometimes in memory cafes. Thanks for having me.
Super. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, Beth was that was one of the very first, I think it was the Act on Alzheimer's meeting that was in St. Cloud back in.
I was there too, yeah.
Boy, and Beth, you were a great inspiration to me and things that we could do. And I wish that we had the network of memory cafes here like you have in Massachusetts, and even like Wisconsin has to a certain degree. I mean, that's kind of been my one of my dreams, is that network, and even the idea of making a mobile memory cafe that could go to some of these rural areas, these small communities that, you know, don't have maybe don't have the ability to start their own memory cafe. You know, take a van and go there and do something with them on one day of the month, and try and do something like that. So that's kind of a long-term, big picture dream for me.
There are, especially since the pandemic, there are a number of networks of either libraries or councils on aging or other types of groups that share a memory cafe where they will each host it on a given month. So there's definitely precedent for that. And it makes it easier for them because all the outreach is done collectively. You know, you have sort of a joint schedule and somebody is kind of managing the whole project. And I'll just say, when I started the cafe that I run in 2014, we were the second one in Massachusetts. And we were up to 120 cafes when the pandemic began, and then we dropped down to about 100 in Massachusetts. And, you know, same in Wisconsin, they started with smaller groups and smaller numbers, and over time it gets easier because people have heard of the model and others want to start them. So you'll get there.
Thanks.
Wasn't it your student, Marie, who said sometimes something small can turn into something really big? There you go.
Yeah. And this was great. And I really appreciate everybody sticking around now, but everybody that was here, because this was, again, this was, you know, SEMA is a big supporter of this. Kirsten helped a lot with, she's been my person I go to if I have a technical problem, and she's all, you know, she sat in on some of the meetings with the teachers. I will say that one of the things that we did, Carolyn and Angie both, I don't know how many weeks in a row we met on Wednesday after school. So these teachers stayed until, like, I mean, sometimes it was like 6 o'clock at night or later, when we got closer to the first workshop, that they stuck around and we sat in their room and talked about things. And I laughed. I always laughed because we'd leave one week and then I'd come back the next week, and these two had been thinking about it all week. And I come in and then it's like, oh, and then we're going to do this. And I'm like, what? Wait, what? We're doing that? And, oh yeah, we're going to do that instead. I'm like, oh, okay. All right, we'll do that. You know, I had no idea that they had all the, you know, their brains were working all through the week on what to do. And because of their background, they had all the ideas of, like, you know, let's color code the tables. And we matched that with name tags so that students got mixed up. They didn't get to stay with their friends necessarily. So we had, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 different colors. Everybody got a name tag with a different color. And then the first round table that they went to was the color of their name tag. And then they all just rotated around out of that. And that kind of created that forced networking with the students. Of course, a lot of them were Pine Island students, but we did have students from La Crosse, or from La Crescent Hoka, which again is like an hour and a half to 2 hours away. And then students from Wabasha Kellogg and students from Zumbrota Mazeppa. So
that is incredible.
I just wanted to say, oh, sorry, Jen.
No, go, Tristan. It's good to see you.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in here and just say how thankful we are to have Marie in our region. Like, we're so fortunate to have her creativity and drive and passion, and it really has impacted our whole Southeast region, and now even potentially the state and beyond. So we'll be here to continue to support the work of this toolkit and workshop, and connect with you, Jen, and just be sure people know about it, and
yes,
all of that. So that more to come on all of that. Just want to be sure people know that they'll be alerted to when those are happening.
That is perfect. Well, people are asking about the toolkit. And so I'm wondering, maybe Marie and Kirsten and I can talk before we meet again in October, and we can send some information out in our blast, you know, about what's going on regarding the toolkit, because there's obviously a lot of interest in this. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah, and
Um,
I'll have better idea of dates and times and the virtual options and stuff like that when we get after this.
No, that's great. I want to wrap up with just a couple thoughts. Number one, I really do hope you all join us either in person at one of the sites or online for this year's summit on September 29th. I did put the registration link in the chat for anybody who hasn't registered. Also, I did mention at the beginning of the meeting, we are not going to have our usual community of learning on the third Thursday in September because we're doing the summit the following week. So we, this group, the community of learning, will rejoin in October. If anybody would like to present or like to lead a discussion, please reach out and let me know because I'm happy to work with you. Kudos to Marie for being brave and reaching out and saying, yeah, I could do that. I think I could do that.
My first slide presentation I made myself.
Impressive. It was really good. So please let us know if you would like to share, because the purpose of this is for all of us to get to learn from one another. So if you have anything else.
I just want to say thanks again, Jen, and thanks to everybody for watching and listening.
Thanks, and I look forward to seeing all of you on September 29th. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.